Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by thanking the University of Cape Town, PSF, for inviting me to come and speak to you this evening. I somewhat think that I'm a victim of my party having chosen me to speak in the State of the Nation debate on the subject of international relations. And my speech has thrown me into all sorts of controversy that I did not anticipate when I prepared my very good speech. It was a good speech. So it has put me into somewhat of a strange and unexpected controversy. But before I make the contribution I wish to make today, and I don't intend to speak for very, very long. I see I've been given a very generous amount of time, but I won't take it all. Before I do that, however, I wish to just clarify that I had been asked to speak about the African National Congress decision and the perspective that as a party we hold on the subject of ensuring that the people of Palestine finally attain their freedom and just human rights. So I'm not going to speak on academic boycott. I suddenly saw that on the social media, and it was not something that had been the subject of the approach to me. An academic boycott must be decided by academics, not a minister of higher education. The minister must be clear as to what she would do with respect to relations to a country that holds in very oppressive conditions another country. But it would be quite outside of the remit of a minister of higher education to begin to say to academics, you must implement an academic boycott. In fact, our Constitution, in the clause on freedom of expression, very clearly indicates that a minister of higher education would not have such a function. So I just wanted to clear that up in case you think I'm afraid of something I thought I should put on the table immediately. Let me begin then by talking a little bit about what is the basis of the international perspective and policy that is held by the African National Congress. Our basis is advancing the interests, particularly of those who are in the south of the world, and thus the most marginalized, most vulnerable, those who enjoy least opportunity and least economic means. So we seek through our international relations to build very strong alliances with countries in the south, with progressive governments in the south, in order to advance our development agenda. We also strongly advocate for the need to urgently reform the United Nations. We do not think that in the 21st century it is correct or appropriate or just that 5 countries in the world have the power to veto what may be progressive, democratic, or indeed just. So we believe very strongly that there needs to be a reform at the UN, and in particular, that there must be a reform in terms of the composition and powers within the Security Council. And we on the African continent, as activists, need to become more robust at arguing for that progressive reform. I think we are too silent on what needs to happen within the United Nations, and particularly the need for representation of those who are not represented adequately in terms of power in the Security Council. Of course, from time to time, there's a rotation, and some countries do have a seat there, but we do not have veto power when we sit there. We are a least powerful member for a short while of the Security Council. So we believe part of the processes of reform must be a fundamental alteration of that body and the composition of its decision-making structures. We as South Africa also actively engage and seek cooperation with developing countries in particular and support important coalitions such as the Non-Aligned Movement, which is a very, we believe, important body for us, and then of course the group G77 plus China. These are important bodies that we work very closely with. There's an urgent need for us as the African National Congress and the government of South Africa to re-energize our contribution to concluding concrete solutions to the impasse that is preventing the people of Palestine from achieving freedom and statehood. I think for some years, we have been somewhat lackluster as government in robustly pursuing redress of the situation that pertains with respect to the people of Palestine. And we need to actively revive our contribution and activism in this regard. In relationship as the ANC to the people of Palestine and their struggle. When President Arafat visited South Africa in 1998, President Mandela welcomed him with the following words. And he was speaking to a comrade. "We have long looked forward," he said, "to your first state visit to our country. It is a distinct honor to welcome Palestine's first president to South Africa, both because your name is revered by millions in South Africa and because you come as a leader of a people who have shared with us the experience of struggle for justice. South Africans drew courage and strength from the support so generously given to by the Palestinian people, even though they themselves lacked freedom. One of the things we fail to appreciate as South Africans is the immense contribution made to our struggle by the international anti-apartheid movement. We enjoyed support from all corners of the world, and now that we are free, we are glorying and enjoying our freedom, and we have forgotten those who are oppressed in other parts of the world. We need to re-energize our activism in the international struggle for justice and freedom. President Mandela continued, "Now that we have achieved our freedom, we have not forgotten our friends and allies who helped us liberate ourselves. As former beneficiaries of selfless international support, South Africans have a duty to lend a supportive hand to others seeking justice and equality. As we give our freedom lasting meaning by the improvement of our people's lives through reconstruction and development, we daily confirm for ourselves that peace, prosperity, and security are possible only if they are enjoyed by all without discrimination. And daily, we reap the benefits of having joined hands together to work together for the things that unite us." Close. It is therefore in that spirit that South Africa has sought to support the Middle East peace process. On the death of President Yasser Arafat in 2004, President Mandela recalled him as follows. "Yasser Arafat was one of the outstanding freedom fighters of his generation, one who gave his entire life to the cause of the Palestinian people. We honor his memory today." So with all that as a guide, we deliberated on the matter of Palestine in detail at the 54th Conference of the African National Congress on a subject that had been occupying the ANC for almost 15 months, of how we deal with the matter of our diplomatic representation in Israel. And at our conference in December last year, we committed to giving practical support to the oppressed people of Palestine. We stated, we reaffirm our solidarity with the people of Western Sahara, Palestine, and Cuba. Our delegates endorsed the proposal that we must give practical support to the oppressed people of Palestine and resolved on an immediate and unconditional downgrade of the South African Embassy in Israel to a liaison office. That is the decision of the African National Congress, and what we are now waiting for is for the ANC and the government to implement this decision of conference. It was adopted with the intention of firmly indicating that South Africa wishes to see a just and lasting peace in Palestine. It's not an anti-Israel resolution. It is a pro-Palestine resolution. And that's how it must be understood. International reports have highlighted the tragic abuse that is the daily life experience of the people of Palestine. The world seems to have grown used to observing the suffering and doing nothing. There has been consternation in Israel about the ANC decision. But our decision does not detract from our commitment to a two-state solution. It does express our dismay and anger at the absence of any attempt by Israel, which is the powerful component of the struggle, and its powerful friends in the north, the absence of any attempt to free the people of Palestine from the oppression they suffer today. If one were to look at what is the experience of the people of Palestine, which is very important, and I hope that the PSF does provide education about what is happening in Palestine, because the worst thing is to join a struggle and not have the detail of the content of the struggle. The education system for Palestinians inside Israel and in the occupied Palestinian territories is deeply discriminatory. Palestinians receive less funding, have fewer teachers, and Arab students and lecturers are underrepresented in Israel's universities and other institutes of higher education. I once spoke to the former Speaker of the National Assembly about a visit she had conducted to Palestine. And I'll never forget her response when I asked her about her experience. She said to me, as I walked in Palestine, I felt as though I was in the worst townships at home. That's how bad it is. To put this lack of educational opportunity and support, let me remind you that three key features characterize the education and training system under apartheid. First, the system of education in our country under apartheid was fragmented along racial and ethnic lines, and children were taught the racist ideology and educational doctrines of apartheid. Second, there was unequal access to education and training at all levels of the system. In fact, some of you who are my age may remember that apartheid was so bad that when they found that there was a good institution providing education, they would make sure they change it so that it is bad and offers low quality. and they would actively pursue that change. The level of social engineering that we experienced in education is horrendous, and often we don't focus on the impact that it definitely had on our system of education. We had vast disparities between black and white schooling, and large numbers of black children and adults had little or no access to education and training. And this is what we see in Palestine. Third, there was a lack of democratic control within the education and training system. Students, teachers, parents, and workers were excluded from deciding what sort of education they wanted. The fragmented, unequal, and undemocratic nature of the education and training system has, in our own country, had profound effects on the development of our economy and our society. It resulted in the destruction, distortion, or neglect of the human potential of our country. And of course, as you know, with devastating consequences for social and economic development. And this is happening in Palestine. The challenge that we faced at the dawn of a democratic society was to create an education and training system in and through which all our people would begin to be able to develop their potential to the full. We have not arrived at the ideal as yet, but changes have been made. Well, the people of Palestine face a similar and in many ways worse situation, not only in education, but also in other key areas of life. Almost 5 million people live under a 50-year-old military occupation and have done so all their lives. Another 1.7 million are Palestinian citizens of Israel and are a minority under pressure, just as black people were under pressure under apartheid. They are poorer than their Jewish neighbors and suffer discrimination, such as we suffered under apartheid. However, those in Israel live a little better than Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. The reality is that Palestinians were promised a fifth of the land as part of the Oslo Accord, and today control a little more than a tenth of historic Palestine. This is the reality confronting the people of Palestine today. The current conflict that we see and catastrophe in human loss terms in the Middle East has pushed the Palestinian question off the global radar screen, but it will come back. To end 100 years of conflict, both sides need to reach an understanding that neither can prevail through violence and oppression. Peace will only be built by sharing the land. As President Abbas of Palestine said recently, we will reaffirm our recognition of the State of Israel, living side by side with the State of Palestine in peace and security. I am asking Netanyahu to sit with me at the table and negotiate. I do not have any preconditions. We only want a temporary building stop in the settlements while these talks are taking place. The Israelis are telling us it is not the right time for a two-state solution. But when is this moment? The right time is now, and not tomorrow or any time in the future. We want to coexist with them, but the Israelis don't want that. They want to separate themselves from us and prefer not to see us. Close quotes. Palestinians have endorsed the two-state solution for 30 years now, but they are fearful that as time goes on, it becomes less and less likely. As Abbas said, as long as the state of Israel continues to be celebrated and rewarded, rather than held accountable to universal standards for its continued violations of international law, it will have no incentive to end the occupation. However, recognizing the terrible plight of the people of Palestine is not sufficient for their rightful expectation that they too must enjoy freedom and human rights. Organizing ourselves to represent the people of Palestine and advocating action against Israel is also not sufficient. We might feel good that we protest, but it is not enough. Up to now, much of the brave efforts have not resulted in freedom for Palestine. Thus, there is possibly a need to look at reforming the form of organization, strategy, and engagement. Our experience in South Africa's struggle against apartheid was that a multi-pronged strategy is vitally necessary. And probably that's where the call for an academic boycott comes from, that there should be multi-pronged strategies. But I'm not saying I'm advocating a boycott. But I am arguing for a multi-pronged strategy if we are serious about what needs to be done. There needs to be an internal component to the struggle, an international dimension, a sectoral dimension, that's where the academic boycott comes in, a mass-based dimension, and the seeking out of those within the oppressive country who are engaged and supportive of change. Because we should be wary of defining only those with an Arab background as interested in a two-state solution. There are some in Israel who themselves are supportive of finding an answer. They need to be sought out and engaged in this multi-pronged strategy. The failure that has been made thus far to make progress may mean we need to begin to think of identifying powerful members of the global community who may give greater impetus to progress in finding a two-state solution. So, for example, among the permanent members of the Security Council, with that powerful veto tool, who can we talk to? Who might we find support through? Perhaps, as South Africans, we need to advocate that the BRICS countries should take on a stronger global role in this regard. And given that South Africa is chairing BRICS in 2018, we might want to appeal, call on, demand that President Ramaphosa places this matter on the BRICS agenda, where he will be in deliberation with two of the permanent veto power Security Council countries. These are This might be some of what we look at. Those that we have expected to lead a change up to now, those that we have expected to respect human rights, those that we thought stood with the people of Palestine have shown patent failure to uphold the struggle for justice and human rights in Palestine. And thus, we need to find new, powerful friends, eager to take on a global struggle for freedom. And I think this is a mandate that we need you to consider giving to the BRICS membership. It is absolutely intolerable for the condition of total human insecurity in Palestine to be allowed to persist. So perhaps PSF at UCT and SASCO, which is our national organization of students, and has always been the more progressive in South Africa. I don't know if it still is, but it was. Perhaps then, alert to this notion of the development of a multi-pronged strategy, these two organizations can take up the task of bringing all higher education institutions into the subject of the freedom of Palestine. And in the same way that our leaders did within the African National Congress, they might begin a journey which, with smartphones, internet, and other media, would be far easier than Oliver Tambo traipsing to Algeria on very long trips. So we might, through student organizations, be able to mobilize a global youth movement to together enter the struggle in support of the people of Palestine. I think, in closing, that a challenge of such immense difficulty cannot be addressed by ourselves as South Africa alone. And I think we need, therefore, a very strong, conjoined global force that would make the struggle of the people of Palestine visible, would place that struggle on the agenda of governments worldwide through young people. Imagine how great it would be that the youth of the world ensured that the people of Palestine are free. It's an important obligation. And it is something that I believe is within the power of young people to undertake. Not that I'm saying we don't have a role, we do. But I believe that you need organized formations. You need to engage with bodies and institutions that are not in any way going to have any doubt as to this is the right path to take. As students, you belong to international students' organizations. You reach students from all over the world. And we might also ask academics and teachers to also join in this. And then political parties to also put their stamp. So you need to make this an immense movement. And I would think the first step is write to President Ramaphosa and say you want to see this matter, both the action on the resolution of the ANC, as well as South Africa beginning to lead through BRICS in reigniting international attention to the plight of the people of Palestine. This is... So these then are the words that I wanted to share with you today. And to conclude by saying that there is no struggle that can be waged without struggle. There is no struggle that can be waged without organization. There is no struggle that can be waged without global collaboration. The tools for executing this in a massive global movement are available to all of us. Let us use them and ensure that in our lifetime, the people of Palestine enjoy freedom. Thank you very much.
I would like to open the floor up for questions that the Honourable Minister has raised around the involvement of BRICS and the use of BRICS and a multi-pronged approach. And I think there are many things that we need to think about as solidarity organizations and organizations within the university and outside of the university to put pressure.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just commend the Minister, not only because of her expertise and experience in education. She spoke from the heart, but more importantly, the issues that Palestine has gone through. She herself, as well as her husband Sharif, has been victims of similar situations when they were teachers in maths and science. In fact, they were suspended teachers because of the opposition of oppression and apartheid in education. Academic side, that when that is downgraded, the organizations, the student organizations that are here, what the Minister is in fact saying is that when that is downgraded, then every other department of the government must be downgraded. In other words, when you do that, the academic relationships that our universities have, that are funded by government, by the way, that they have, can also ensure that the academics from oppressive Israel do not enter our universities. And therefore, we also will not allow our academics from here to go and support a state of Israel. And I know, and my last word I want to say, Minister, he knows it very well, one of the finest ways that apartheid had to stop was when the universities of the United States, the students of the United States, said to their various councils, university councils, listen, we have shares in these universities, and these universities have shares in the business communities of America at that time, and the Minister knows exactly where I'm coming from. In other words, they had the biggest say in ensuring that apartheid is ended in this country. So it's up to the academics and more so up to the students to ensure that that comes. I would like the Minister to answer me on that particular issue, if that is at all possible. It is to stop academic the relationships, and particularly this institution where we are sitting here, that they now stop getting those academics in from Israel to come and be party of this democratic South Africa. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Minister, is around the issue that, recently we were downgraded for certain stands that the country took on the international scale. Now my question would be, should our government take certain stands against the state of Israel, which we know is a very close friend of Donald Trump? Now, doesn't that, or how will that affect us? Are we ready to then again be downgraded based on our stance against Israel, which is very necessary, by the way, but are we ready for that as a country? Are the academics ready for that? Are the economists ready for that? Because the problem is that we may take that stance as the young people, we may mobilize, as the young people, we may convince our country, and our country, remember we are talking here, if we are talking about BRICS countries, we are talking about two world powers, or two of the world powers, who have shown your Moody's and them a middle finger. Not once, not two times, you know. But when are we as South Africa ready to then show that middle finger and say, we will take such a stand because as a country we supported ourselves when we went through such an experience. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Minister. Bashir Sakrani. We live in an era of state capture, and we are very conscious of it. And the most powerful state in the world is hostage to Israel, as we all know. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Israel is spreading its poison wider, and there's a determined program to capture Africa. It is very visible and it is very evident. Those who are susceptible, unfortunately, are politicians. What hope is there that African nations who want to forge ahead and share some of the lucre and glitter will be able to resist the unrelenting propaganda and blackmail at which Israel is a past master?
Thank you.
I think on the matter of the academics and what they do, I've been very clear. That would be a decision of academics. You'll recall with the first decision on academic boycott of South Africa in 1965 by a group of academics in the United Kingdom. It was academics who took the decision in reaction to the banning of academics, two academics who were members of the South African Communist Party at the time, from being able to teach in universities in South Africa. So that is something that the academic community must deal with. I think once a minister says, I order an academic boycott, I think you're on very dangerous ground. Because then next thing they'll be saying, I order you to teach this textbook. So this is why I'm saying that what needs to happen is that a movement, a solidarity movement must be generated. And it doesn't happen by standing on the pillbox. You have to work at it. You have to develop that solidarity across many organizations until you have a shared international perspective. No country on its own, no matter how brave, will do it. Not a struggle of this immensity. So I just want to be clear on that. I think it's important. I'm sure if you began to have a situation where, like Stephen Hawking did, for example, many more academics join in, it will become self-evident that a position must be taken. But it can't be done by just one or two. That you won't get it. So I was really posing a question because I don't know how organized PSF is, for example. I don't know whether it has branches throughout South Africa or what. But if PSF, as I think they are committed to freedom and justice for the people of Palestine, then they, and of course the ANC, because it is the leader in this regard and must therefore be party to this, must then work much harder than I think has been done to build that front. So really, the ANC has passed this resolution, the government has to act on it, and we're waiting for that to happen. We have a new government in place, a new cabinet. I'm still getting used after 8 days to being in higher education, so I can imagine with Minister Sisulu, she's faced with this. So, you know, it's something that we have to act on, work at really acting. Benjamin, we weren't downgraded because we took particular positions. We were downgraded because our economy is bad, because we had corruption, because our state-owned enterprises had so many guarantees from the state that it was clear there's a massive burden on the public purse. And those things are being corrected now. So I think there are reasons. I'm sure those ratings agencies are political. You can hear their statements. But I think we shouldn't deny the fact that our economy has been in a parlous state and is part of the reason for what we've experienced in the past year. And as we've shown, Benjamin, under leaders such as President Mandela and President Mbeki, the ANC has not been afraid of taking difficult positions, which place it in an unpopular world position. This is but one, and we must act on it. We've committed that we will implement. I don't think there is ambiguity from the ANC. There's a clear resolution, it must be acted upon. And the ANC must ensure that it implements at a time that is most suitable for it, both as a government and as a political party. But the resolution will be acted upon and implemented. There's no ambiguity. The two-state solution has always been the international policy position of the African National Congress, so it's not my personal view. But of course I believe in it, and I believe the people of Palestine must be free. I believe in justice. I believe the people of Sahrawi must be free. It's not a personal opinion, it's my party's position, and I fully support it. We live in state capture. Hey, people like the state capture. You know, I think the USA has captured the world rather than it being captured. And it does it in a very powerful way. I was looking at the statistics of communities in America. And it said, when you look at economic power, that you see where the directives are coming from. When you look at power in the media, power in the financial sector, then you see where the directives are coming from. Now, I think the program, as you call it, to capture Africa, are these visits that Israel has been making. And alhamdulillah that they didn't come to South Africa because they recognize what our stand is. But as far as I'm aware at this moment, I've heard one or two, I think it's about 2 African countries that have made very straight statements that are not in line with the positions of the African Union. But I reckon 2 out of 55 means there's still opportunity to actually get the message entrenched. And that's where I think, as organizations, we should be giving greater impetus to the African National Congress and saying to them, we support the position you've taken. We want to see you act on it. And agitating and calling on. I don't mean by that burning tires, because that will put us off entirely. But really saying to the ANC, this is a good decision. Act on it. Act on it. I think South Africa is one of the countries that is able to withstand the kind of capture you referred to.
Yes.
And there are politicians who do withstand it, like me. So, what I was really trying to argue for is that this is a struggle of great immensity, of great weight, just like the struggle we had to fight. And it's something we cannot take lightly. It's something that needs a poster protest every day, like Black Saturday, outside the Israeli embassy, every day. It's something that needs a weekly march. It's something that needs all international organizations to be approached, identified as supporters or not interested. It's a big undertaking. That's what the struggle against apartheid was. So the point I was making was that soapbox we must be careful about. Rhetoric we must watch. See, because rhetoric sounds good, but the people of Palestine do not become free. So what do we investigate? Is where are the pockets of support? How do we marshal them to get a bigger force behind this? So that really, for me, was the message that I'm conveying. And I think that there is support throughout the world. But there isn't an organized formation that is drawing all this together. We were fortunate. We had the liberation movements. And it wasn't just ANC, it was PAC. They were the main, really, to be honest. People want to pretend they were others. But those were the main. And they were out there. They were out there engaging with the world. They made it their business to create a solid front of opposition. But they also were very clear that the nature of struggle must have these dimensions I've referred to. So you couldn't have the international dimension without mass-based. You couldn't have international without underground. You couldn't have international without an organization in Palestine being there and being organized. So national, international, underground, academic, school, all of that, women, has to be drawn together. That is the type of struggle you fight. And then, that global dimension of powerful countries. Russia has shown some interesting characteristics. Are there opportunities there? I don't know. China is increasingly more confident. Are there opportunities there? I don't know. But I'm saying consideration has to be given to all this. This is a complex issue. And it would be very nice for me to come here and pretend through rhetoric that I shout very loud and everything is easy.
As an activist since 2014, there is a genuine reason why there is a strong concern over the commitment of the ruling party, ANC, in carrying out all this cutting ties with the Zionist entity Israel. By the way, I don't call myself just pro-Palestine, I call myself anti-Israel as well. Simply because Israel is a synonym for injustice and neo-colonialism. So there is no reason for me to be apologetic. One of the reasons I believe people have the concern is because of the fact that the ruling party has been advocating out of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions principles. The ruling party has been doing what people, ordinary citizens, are supposed to be doing instead of a ruling party is supposed to be doing. The ruling party's position should not be advocating for boycott or divestment. That is what ordinary citizens and businesses should be doing. Of course, as a mass-based political party, the ruling party can mobilize, but sanctions is what the government should be doing. And I support my comrade from the backside, that the government should have been, long time ago, sending the Israeli ambassador back. During the height of the Zionist aggression in 2014, 5 Latin American countries sent the Israeli ambassadors home, including the big country Brazil, including one of the countries with the highest proportion of Jews in parliament, which shows that there are pro-Palestinian Jews. In Chile, one of the smallest countries, El Salvador, of course, Venezuela. Why didn't South Africa do that? And trade between South Africa, both civilian and military trade, has been thriving for the past decade. So I personally believe, I cannot believe it until it's done, and it's been insincere, but I personally also appreciate whether or not it's practically done, the fact that the government has officially, finally taken a stance. Thank you very much.
He spoke of utilizing the 2 BRICS members that are permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, China and Russia, to apply pressure on Israel's Palestine policy through use of their veto power and to provide global leadership for human rights, to paraphrase. Given China and Russia's records with respect to human rights within their own borders, and their opinions of international human rights as a justification for adversarial foreign policy, why does the ANC believe these countries can provide such leadership?
Politics, economics seem to be strange bedfellows. Maybe the minister can tell us how this mix can be sorted. The ANC, if it is true that our diamonds go to Israel and it comes back to us and sold at a profit. Also, I'd like to ask the minister if it is true that we send arms to Israel. So, I attended a meeting before the election, and a deputy minister promised there he would give attention to the plight of children in Israel. It never happened. So, politics being what it is there anything either a singular minister or someone else can do with the rhetoric that we hear in a public forum and what actually happens inside ministries where Israel is actually entertained? Inside Israel, personal experience, South Africans are treated, said to me, we get treated very well here. If you get to a checkpoint, you're given some mercy if you're a South African, which shows the good relationship that we have with Israel. So, can the minister explain, please, what
downgrading is going to work? Are we talking about lesser representation in Israel, or are we talking about withdrawing our representation altogether? And then also, based on your earlier answer, you spoke about when the time is right. Can you give us an indication about when the resolution will be implemented and what would be the right time?
In that particular commission, on international relations, Sanel is my name, from an ANC branch called Elijah Bahai in Kailichi. I have reduced the number of the questions that I wanted to ask. One relates to the question of the balance of forces with regards to the approach on this particular matter. This question is informed by the fact that there is an acknowledgement, or rather a recognition by one, that lack of humility result to lack of solidarity. And if you happen not to be having those characteristics, you will never become an internationalist. That's what you would get on characters like Benjamin Netanyahu and the US president. Now, are there any grounds, Minister, that we can be able to say we are moving closer to addressing the issue, or we are lacking back? I'm asking this due to the fact that last year there was a celebration, or rather an acknowledgement of the 70th anniversary of resolution, or rather a declaration of resolution 181 of the United Nations General Assembly. Bear in mind, 7 years, a resolution had been taken. In line with that, the movement had taken a stance that is clear on this particular matter. From OR, Nelson Mandela, and now. I think we are beginning to take a positive step by this downgrade. Lastly, is international law going to help us on the plight of the Palestinians? Given the fact that Karl Marx taught us that law is a reflection of what is called the base or economic structure, which in this instance, we have mentioned that there are countries that have veto powers, powerful countries in the United Nations General Assembly. I want you to help us understand as to whether international law is something that we can rely upon in terms of addressing this particular plight of Palestinians.
Right. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for your speech. What I want to say is that I hear the Minister speaking about the two-state solution, which is, to me as a Palestinian, is actually quite problematic, because the two-state solution is based on injustice, separation, and inequality. And it's a solution that calls for actually creating Bantustans in Palestine. So the question that comes there then, is it morally acceptable to take such a discriminatory stance, to support such a solution that was actually imposed and on the Palestinian leadership, who was pressured by the US to accept that? Because apparently at that time they couldn't, and they didn't have their comrades next to them to support them and to say to the US and other imperialist powers that no, we don't want that solution. And don't you think that South Africa should actually advise such lost leadership and pressured leadership to listen to the Palestinian people and civil society organizations on the ground who are calling for the one-state solution? Thank you.
Israel position, it's a pro-Palestinian position. In saying that, does that statement not endorse support for the policies of Israel? And secondly, yesterday I attended a lecture, IAW lecture at Stellenbosch University, in which about 20 people, including myself, attended. And the student body there of the organizers complained that the university is clamping down on pro-Palestinian discourse and engagement. So because we are at an academic institution, I felt it's needed to ask this question. What is the department doing to improve the engagement on uncomfortable topics such as the Palestinian issue at universities that are seemingly continuing with a colonial discourse?
Your speech directed anything or focused on the Palestinian leadership. We all know that leaders can cause a lot of havoc. And let's take, for example, Abbas, who's in his position at the moment, is in his 12th year of his 4-year term. Surely, do you not think that a change in the Palestinian leadership could advance peace? Not that taking the blame out onto Israel all the time. Surely that it's a two-way street. Surely it's a two-way street, and that everyone should be able to come together. And the fact of the matter is that Hamas and Fatah they can't get along. They've tried 3 times in order to make a unity government. It ended up yesterday with the Palestinian Prime Minister almost getting assassinated. So the question is, surely South Africa can help the Palestinians try and get democracy up and running so that they can change their leaders. Israel has changed their leaders how many times since 2000? While in the same amount of time, there have only been 2 Palestinian presidents.
When will we see the South African Parliament make a formal commitment to the boycott, disinvest and sanctions movement? You spoke about the support that struggle stalwarts enjoyed during that time from the international community. When will we see this formalized to the powers who have in policy? And if you're talking about doing this, conversations with BRICS, surely it should happen before then, before they arrive, and then we can get them on board.
That's very important, and I must make it clear. And if you wish to know the policy of the South African government, it's widely available on the website of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. I do agree that we need to ensure that the ANC executes the resolution that it has adopted. As far as I'm aware, as a leadership, there's a commitment to implementing the resolution. And that is what I would say here. There is no policy in the government on sanctions at the moment. So I don't know whether sending the ambassador home like Venezuela is something that a policy decision has been made on. I'm not aware of it. On the BRICS proposal, what I'm saying is that here's a bloc with huge, powerful potential. Is it being used strategically? I think there could be better use, and that is what I am proposing. I do not have the detail of the record of China or Russia on human rights, but I know what the United States is doing in Syria, in Yemen, in Iran, in Palestine, in many countries of the world. And I think alongside our concern about countries such as China and Russia, we must be honest enough to be bold and angry about the way the United States escapes from being one of the largest murderers in the world. And I don't think there's anybody who can stand up and persuade me that any country has done more than that one and escaped with doing it. I'm speaking here, and I was very careful about it, about the resolution of the ANC and what it has said it will do. As to further sanctions and diamonds and arms, etc., we also have diamonds polished in Belgium. I think we should do polishing here. This is part of the economic development that we must see in South Africa. Greater value addition and beneficiation in our countries. We should stop exporting our rich mineral resources to other countries to add value for us, and we purchase back at high price. I can't speak for the deputy minister, same way no deputy minister can speak for me. And I personally have never visited Israel nor Palestine because it's just something I've not been able to do as yet. So I don't know how well South Africans are treated. I do know I've been concerned by some of the statements of our ambassador in Israel, and I think the decision to downgrade assists us in that regard. On how the downgrade will work, this is something that must be worked on by the government. And the responsible minister will make an announcement once the implementation is to happen. And I think we should leave it at that. As I said, I'm not part of the student organization. I'm a member of government. And there's no way I'm going to come here and pretend to you tomorrow the downgrade will happen. The country's government has a responsibility to execute this decision in the best way possible. And that's what will happen. So when will it be implemented? Let's wait and see. Give Minister Sisulu time to settle in and do her job. And also, of course, Sabelo, we've got to weigh the balance of forces and weigh when is the best time and what is the nature and how do you do it. I think that, yes, I agree, it's been a very, very long time, and it's of great concern. The matter of international law, again, is something you are here in an academy. Study the international law. You've got leading professors here. I see some of them are in this room. They should be helping to study international law. Why is the ICC more interested in African leaders and less interested in the rest of the world? What do you do about that? So I'm really saying you need to look at what are the tools available and how are they being utilized. Are there levers that could be used further? Well, Abdullah, I'm reiterating the positions of our government. We have said a two-state solution, and it's not ourselves. We're drawing on what has been said by the leaders of the government in Palestine at present. I read a quote from a speech in the General Assembly very recently by President Abbas. He makes reference to the two-state solution. So I cannot make policy here. It's not my business to do so. And so the fact that you are against it and that we should listen to Palestinian people who want a one-state solution, I can only repeat what we have as the policy of the government. And I think in the final analysis, what would confront those who will finally lead will be, what do you do about the rest? Does what you propose address your problem? Our preference in waging the struggle against apartheid was that we could get rid of the nationalists. In the end, we ended up having to negotiate. I think we negotiated what could only be the best outcome at the time. There are people who believe we sold out, such as you are saying, one-state solution. The question you must answer, when you are faced as a leader by having to find a solution, is the option I'm attaching myself to achievable to the best interest of my people? That is a question a leader has to answer. And so I can only reiterate our policy, but as to the struggle you are waging and your particular beliefs, those are beliefs you must hold. And if by persuasion you persuade the government that its policy must shift to a one-state solution, then that is another struggle you would wage. But I think always that a leader's responsibility is to their people and to the best option for their people. And people need peace for development. When I say I'm not anti-Israel, I'm very clear in what I'm saying. See, because recently I'm being accused of being anti-Semitic. Because you keep inviting me to these platforms. So a particular image is being imposed on me. And I'm getting all kinds of letters and social media messages. So I have to make it very clear, I'm not anti-Jewish people. It would be very wrong for me to pretend that I am. So that is the position. And if anyone in here is pro-Palestine and anti-Jewish people, you'll have a problem with me. Because to me, that's racist. But I'm against oppression. I didn't say I'm pro the government of Israel. I never said I'm pro Netanyahu. But you have to confront, realistically, the fact that you have people who are in conflict. How do you arrive at a solution that ensures peace? And if I stand up and say decimate the Jewish people, will that get us anywhere? So that's why I make that statement. Now, unfortunately, you asked your question, I'm responding. We can't debate. And as the ANC, we haven't advocated an anti-Jewish position, nor a one-state solution. It's not part of us. What are we doing as DHET? The matter of academic freedom, which is what is taught, what is researched, how you examine, who you admit, who you form international links with, is very much a decision that the institutions and the sectors must make. And so, unless I get a letter or some complaint from Stellenbosch students to say we are being made to admire the Nazis every day, or some such thing, which then is offensive and is against the law in terms of our Constitution, or against the policies which we have, which definitely indicate that there would be sanctions against hate speech. There's no way I can act. I've not had any report. There's been no letter to me. So I can't say, hey, Stellenbosch, I've come here to tell you how you should run your academic. I don't know. Nobody has complained. I've had complaints about academics being treated badly at some institutions. I'm investigating that, but it's not been on grounds of what they teach or research. It's on promotion, on sexual harassment, etc. So I've had some complaints, and I will deal with what I receive. Well, I referred to President. I think that would be hugely arrogant of South Africa, just as we would be most offended if the Palestinian people told us who our leaders should be. And as for Hamas and Fatah, I think they know more about how they should relate than we do. And we should leave it to them. But we should encourage them that a united force in Palestine is urgently necessary if we're to secure the progress that we want. Because a leadership at war with each other does pose challenges for achieving the objectives of a struggle. So I don't think it's the business of South Africa to be sort of agent provocateur in Palestine and start changing the leaders of Palestine. I think the struggle we want to wage is one of solidarity, is one of having effect on securing movement through the global community. And it's something that I think is doable, but we need more effort at it. And of course, I'm always amused at how South Africans suddenly believe they know more about democracy than anybody else. And we need to be careful about that as well. When will Parliament make a formal commitment? Ask parliamentarians. They have had resolutions on the matter, very clear resolutions. As far as I'm aware, members of Parliament don't go to Palestine, to Israel, and as government, we don't travel there and hold meetings in Israel, etc. It's been quite a clear public statement and policy that has been agreed to. So as to Parliament, really, I think there are caucuses in Parliament. One of the big friends of Israel in Parliament is the African Christian Democratic Party, as well as the Democratic Alliance. Thank you. I think I've tried to answer everybody. I'm not going to satisfy you because I'm not a populist. So you won't be happy.